when you really want to scale, you have to go outside of your walls. Have that company take a look. And now it's with that set of eyes that we look at companies, and then we can say to them, okay, what are the outcomes that matter?
Jerel Benjamin, founder and CEO of Profit Gold Group. They were founded back in 2005. They focus on scaling businesses. In fact, he's worked with over 50 different industries. Jerel Benjamin, thank you for joining me here on Mind Your Business.
Oh, pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, Jerel, I in doing the homework for this show, you've scaled businesses in over 50 different industries. So, the show is only an hour. I don't know how we're going to get to everything. We're not going to do each industry per minute. We're not going to do that because we got to stay focused. But let's talk about some of the foundations, right? Because this show comprises of tens of thousands of listeners through the various different platforms and cover a wide range of businesses, small, medium-sized, and there are inflection points along the way. Perhaps opening up this incredible conversation, what is either the time frame or maybe the employee headcount? What is the inflection point when a business should seriously start saying to themselves, all right, I've kind of taken it as far as I could take it. I now need a professional to advise me how to get to the next step?
That's a great question. And I get asked that really when I do webinars and seminars all over the world. People will say, well, how do I know? How do I know I'm ready to scale?
Right.
And really, the answer is not what you would think. It's really not a utopia or a certain place you actually come to, as much as it is looking at the areas of heartburn that are recurring. And so it's really, sometimes it's referred to as a glass ceiling. And those who are in business, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They'll bring the company to a certain point, but then they realize they're the primary engine, but they can't get it across that threshold because it's not a lack of ambition. It's not a lack of desire. It's just we're not able to cross into that next phase of business where, to use an illustration, I'll say where we can start even looking at the autopilot in some areas of the business, because now it's starting to go on its own momentum and continue to move forward.
So as you're mentioning, this is not a type of situation where they've hit $1 million in gross revenue, or it's 50 employees, or what? Perhaps again, even though you've explained it, but I just want to hold on to it because there's so many people listening and they're saying, I need to know the answer to that. What is the point? What is that point when they're like, all right, I hit the glass ceiling, I know it. And what do I do now?
Yeah, that's really it. When you say I've hit the glass ceiling and I know it, I can't go any faster. We can't produce.
Okay, so that's the point. That's the point. When the person, now I imagine also it needs the realization of the individual, because some people hold on forever or for too long, and they're saying to themselves, yeah, I'll figure it out, and they keep on boing, they keep on banging. Okay. So what is the next step? Good. The person has the realization. They hit the glass ceiling. Explain the process. What is a company? What is the, perhaps the word is for this, the evolution of a business as it evolves and scales beyond its original capacity?
Well, the scaling really comes with a very simple word that we would have to unpack, and that is systemization. Scaling requires systems. The systems have to do the heavy lifting. Now, for a company that feels like they're at that point, once you make that realization, you realize you have to step outside of your box, which is also going to require that you step out of your comfort zone, because now you need to consult people who have actually scaled. But here's the catch. Mm-hmm. Scaled and failed. It's very important here. Personally, I've owned 9 corporations over a 27-year period. And I always tell people when I speak to them, first thing out of my mouth is, this is not a kumbaya story. My first two companies failed miserably. And my own arrogance and all that had a lot to do with it. Being young in my own 20s, thinking I knew everything, had to fall on my face twice to realize I didn't. But it's that scaling requires people who've done it, but also failed at it. Because there's an old sports analogy I always use, and I say, you don't know how to win until you know how to lose. And then when you consult with people who've lost, then you know you're in the right arena to start saying, okay, what type of systems of sustainability do I need to put in place so I can start scaling beyond my own personal efforts? Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, and it's I guess we would say a sad reality, but that is the fact. Someone who had failures along the way, as they've developed the resilience, the knowledge, I say more than knowledge and resilience on how to move forward, because they now have become familiar with the potholes in the road, so to speak, and they know how to avoid it because they've unfortunately busted a few tires along the way.
And they know what to look for. They know what it feels like. I never thought, back in my 20 plus years ago that those very painful setbacks would be some of the stories and some of the experiences that to this day, I work with companies in 22 countries around the world. To this day, I can still go back and I can resonate with my clients because, I always tell them, whatever you've done, I've probably done worse. So let's just have that conversation and let's get it out on the table. And you'll be surprised at the comfort level that develops very quickly with my clients, because I have, whatever it is, I've probably done it worse and done it multiple times, but learned from that. Where now scaling is more of a algorithmic equation instead of a hoped for aspiration.
Amazing. Another factor is that, not a fact, I just amazed, 22, you said 22 different countries.
Yes.
And 51 different industries.
Yes.
But before I ask you how people could find out more information, we go to a break, because when we come back, we're going to talk about building systems and processes you touched on. Perhaps you could even just paint the picture. What is some of maybe the more exotic type of, we're not asking for anything confidential, but just industries or countries that you advise in?
Well, I'd say all countries are interesting. I have a client out of New Zealand that actually works for the stock exchange now. And they were aspiring for that level when we engaged. And then we started scaling. We started scaling the company. Now, we had to root out some things that weren't right. That's the first thing I will always tell any business, is that you can't be afraid of the fact that you're going to have to unlearn a few things. But I worked with them. Now they are one of the biggest IT providers for the country of New Zealand. I'll give you one more real quick, is in a stateside in America is the mass tort lawyer industry. I never thought that we'd be in that industry, but back in 2013, we changed a lot of things in that industry that are still having an effect today. And that was interesting because of the speed by which the industry works and the intricacies. But we were able to scale a company there actually to over $3 billion in revenue.
Wow. Jerel Benjamin, founder and CEO of Profit Gold Group. Jerel, how could people find out more about your services when they're ready to scale?
Oh, easiest thing is just go to the website, profitgoldgroup.com. You go there, you'll see a short video of how we automate, how we systematize, how we do what we do. My staff 24/7. You can give us a call, live person's waiting, and we offer actually complimentary consultations. So it's not like someone has to commit, because that was one of the biggest things I can say after the break that I wanted to put in my company is you don't have to commit to find out the information you need to know. Just get the information you need to know, talk to one of us, let's have that dialogue, and then you make your own informed decision.
Amazing. ProfitGoldGroup.com. My guest tonight is Jerel Benjamin, founder and CEO of Profit Gold Group. And why do we have him on? Because he is an expert in scaling businesses. And I get feedback all the time, and I really appreciate it from small businesses, medium-sized businesses. In fact, some of the recent feedback we got was indirectly, but that from a professor at Columbia. Thank you. We've had some of our guests have landed Fortune 500 clients by appearing on the show. So therefore, of course, that means that there's a responsibility on the team here at Bottom Line Marketing Group to make sure that we have great guests week in and week out, and we deliver. And Jerel Benjamin is an expert on scaling businesses. He scaled businesses in 51 different industries, works in 22 countries throughout the world. If you're interested in scaling your business, reach out to him, ProfitGoldGroup.com, ProfitGoldGroup.com. And tonight's show is brought to you in part by ProfitGoldGroup.com. You know, Jerel, just a question first, just to paint the picture, so to speak. Again, there are many people listening, but there'll be people watching when we go up on YouTube. Question. Perhaps you could share a dream, your go-to example of a company that you kind of, I don't want to say from worst to first, but company that was kind of ho-hum, dragging along, and then they hit stardom with, through your advice, counsel, and perspective.
Oh, I'd love that. Yeah, I do have one that comes to mind quite readily. And we've had some great successes over the years and really some great friendships that have come out of a lot of those successes. One of the most notable ones was it was a firm, and like I had mentioned before the break, the mass tort lawyer industry. And they had actually knew our company because we had actually worked with one of the senior attorneys' wife with her company. Mm-hmm. And he had given her what really made him notice. I'll just give you the context around it.
Yes, please.
He had given her a $1 million loan to start a company that she wanted, which was a summer camp for kids. Okay. And so she consulted us, and he had given her a 10-year loan to pay it back. So she took the $1 million, went ahead, consulted us. She paid him back in 13 months. And it caught his attention so quick that he said, okay, what's going on here? How did you do it? How did you scale? So that's how he was introduced to us. So what he was doing at the time was he had put a $2.5 million seed money investment in a new law firm division that was going to go into the mass tort industry. So long story short, it took 19 months, and by the 19th month, and I kid you not, this is my signature story over 27 years of being in business, $3.1 billion in revenue.
Wow.
So the way we got there, we actually took him to about $2 billion, and then the rest of the industry just kind of folded in and started making alliances with him, and that's what got him to $3 billion. But it was really the scalability of it. We went in, and what they were missing, they had 17 ambitious people who were willing to work with us and allow us to make key performance execution documents, which I'll explain in a minute, and do all of these types of scalability tools. Now, what ended up happening was they went from 17 people to 12 because actually once the systems started to work, 3 of them decided to find their future somewhere else, and 2 others were told to find their future somewhere else. Mm-hmm. So that happened, and so they went down a little bit. But by the end, they had 131 employees and an attrition rate, which if you know the industry, the law firm industry, the attrition rate's very, very high. And they had an attrition rate when we got there of literally 60% over a 90-day period. They dropped that attrition rate to 3% annually by the time.
I believe you as a person, but it's not believable.
It was because of the systems. I can't take credit for it. It wasn't a kumbaya conversation, but we had systems for every action that could be repeated. And that's the key to scalability. It's creating systems that are devoid of personality, that are devoid of emotion, but people can go in, and literally the term we coined from that, which you've heard me say from time to time, is we had things broken down to where a 5-year-old could understand it. And that's really the key to scalability. We always find that in small business, even some large corporations, they rely on a few good men or women. And that, unfortunately, becomes the Achilles heel to growth. Because should they ever, for any reason, win the lottery, you pick it, decide to find their future somewhere else, that IP goes right with them. And that's what keeps scalability from happening to a lot of companies. You have to put it out there and put it in a way where it's not something you need 5 degrees to understand. Break it down where a 5-year-old can understand it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that is what allowed that company to scale and become the powerhouse.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Now, in a bit, we'll get to key performance indicators, KPI. But now let's talk about what we told the audience we would touch on after the break, and that is building systems, building process. Yeah.
Yes. Let's go ahead and get into that. I'm sure the question that your audience is, how do we even start building process?
Yes, correct. Where do you start? Yeah.
Yes, and I will be happy to tell you, because they all start the same. I want you to think of it kind of like an engine block on a car. No matter what the car is, the engine block is the same. So the components I'm going to give you here are just basics to the engine block of building systems. You always have to start, I think it was Stephen Covey that said, you always start with the end in mind. You always start a system with knowing the outcome of what it is to produce. And that outcome has to be a monetizable outcome. It can't be just, well, the outcome is make my life easier, so let me hire an assistant. It's not really an outcome, but people will say it. It's not an outcome.
Right.
An outcome is only a plausible outcome when you can see the direct correlation to improving your services or products, which will ultimately improve the bottom line of the company or better position the company. If it does not improve the bottom line or better position the company, then it's not an outcome that's sustainable. Because an outcome needs a denominator by which you can attach it to, and then you work your way back into what are the systems, what is required in order to make that happen.
Okay, now you made it sound very simple. Jerel. Is it that simple?
No, here's the caveat, and you're so right, and I'm going to speak on experience here. Yes, I did make it sound very simple, because usually, like us, my firm, we're an outside resource. See, we can come to a company, and we already have removed the emotion. We have zero emotion. It wasn't our blood, sweat, and tears that made it anyway. So when I can look at a company, or my staff can look at a company from 30,000 feet up, we already have no emotion, because it is the emotion that makes it the hardest thing, which is why I always tell companies, when you really want to scale, you have to go outside of your walls. Go out to somebody who's not going to feel the hours and years of tension and frustration and the battle fatigue that you've had to even get yourself here, who's going to be completely numb to those things because they never experienced them. Have that company take a look. And now it's with that set of eyes that we look at companies, and then we can say to them, okay, what are the outcomes that matter? And we can coach them to that point, and then we can back it in from there. That's the critical part that makes what seems very difficult easy. But you have to be willing to do that.
Now, perhaps could you describe some differences in the approach, if there are, for a B2C operation or a B2B operation?
There are some differences, but ironically, the majority of them are the same. So I'd say about 70% of this engine block is exactly the same. The difference is, with a B2C operation, you're going directly to the consumer, directly to the customer. Then your outcomes are going to be based upon the response that you want to see from that client or from that customer. Mm-hmm. And so it's going to be grounded in the response that you want to facilitate. Now, with B2B, it is actually similar in some ways. But with B2B, usually your product or your service is enhancing their operation. So you're looking at it from when I deliver, does what I deliver and the way I go about delivering that product or service allow them to get to what their aspirations are when they came to consult with us in the first place. So there's similarity there, but B2C is going to be a lot more fluid, because you're going to have more of them. And so they're going to have a lot more, there's going to be a lot more energy over there. And so you have to look at a lot more components. But the principle is actually very similar, ironically.
My guest is Jerel Benjamin, founder and CEO of Profit Gold Group. They are a firm that specializes in scaling businesses. Jerel, how can people find out more about your amazing firm?
The best thing to do is, again, go to our website, profitgoldgroup.com, because not only is there a short video at the beginning of how we do what we do, but as you start to go through the pages, you'll start to see there's so many options. Because what I wanted to do was I wanted to create a firm over the last 15 years where it actually catered to every segment. So whether it's a small, a medium, or a large corporation, we handle them all the way up through the mergers and acquisitions. So a lot of that material is there. A lot of it is in video format, but also you can read a lot of it. And then always there's the option. You can fill out a form if you want and have us give you a call based on that information. Or you can simply say, will somebody please talk to me? And in that case, you can just send us an email. Actually, you can access our calendar now. You can access our calendar on our website. So you don't even need to send us an email and say, can someone talk to me? You can just go directly to the calendar, book a spot, let us know what you want to discuss. We'll be right there.
Amazing. My guest tonight is none other than Jerel Benjamin, founder and CEO of the Profit Gold Group. And we're talking about what he specializes in, and that is scaling any type of business. He's scaled businesses in over 50 industries. He works with companies around the world, over 22 different in 22 different countries. And that's why we reached out. We wanted to get Benjamin on in order to hear ideas, advice on how to actually scale a business. Now, Jerel, here's an interesting, maybe a delicate question. I hope I'm not putting you on the spot. When a company realizes they're hitting the glass ceiling and they gotta grow, probably they're a little nervous reaching to an outsider when it's going to involve, a tremendous amount of confidentiality. Perhaps they would just look to take someone internal in order to build it. Are they comfortable reaching out? And I hope I'm not putting you on the spot here.
No, not at all.
Okay.
No, they're not. That's a very valid question because we have to navigate it all the time. Because when you're talking about scalability, like we said during the last segment, breaking it down to where a 5-year-old can understand it, that is an almost impossible task internally. And I'll illustrate it a couple different ways. One is people are afraid to come outside because they're afraid, how will the team react to the change? How will, people receive an outsider? How do I know they know my business? Those are all typical questions. Yep. And we can easily navigate those in the first few minutes of consulting with anyone. But really, I want you to realize, and this is for all the business owners out there listening, you know your business. And most of us who have been in business for decades, here's an easy illustration. We've been driving cars for decades.
Right.
If I live 10 minutes down the road and you said, hey, can you come on over right away? It may take me 11 minutes just so I can go ahead and find the keys and get out to the car. But, in 10 minutes,
right,
basically I'm going to be there. Because I've been driving so long, I don't need to go through that.
Right.
But here's the thing I like to ask every business owner who's thinking we can do this internally. The details required that have to be committed to muscle memory are so detailed in your business. You know them, so you don't have to think about it. But if you think you do, I want you to find the first 14-year-old you can find at the mall. Give them a 10-minute crash course verbalization of how to drive your car. And let them know that we're in New York now and I'll meet you in South Florida in 2 days and hand them the keys. Would you do that?
Well, Jerel, what a crazy question.
Well, and the thing is, you may tell them in 10 minutes, okay, this is how you drive a car. But there's so many activities, the mirrors, the ignition, how hard to touch the brake, and all of those things. Those are all skills that have to be committed to muscle memory. To that 14-year-old who's never driven a car before, you give them a crash course, you're going to use terms, you're going to make suppositions that a person who's a veteran who's been driving for decades would automatically know. But for a person who's never driven before, they're going to need to know a lot more information. That's why you go to an outside firm, because we ask the questions. I can set a professional in front of you who knows nothing about your business. And the first thing you're going to do when you start to break down where your activities are, so we can get to a KPI format, they're going to ask you all those questions because we don't have a clue. But we're smart enough to ask them. And that's how you get to that scalability component of being able to articulate what your business is. Someone on the outside has to do it.
By the way, that example you gave, I know people are thinking of this. I'm just going to say what's on people's minds. Your example you gave about getting that kid to do it, and you called it a crash course. Guess what would happen? That would be a serious crash course.
Absolutely. And it's your car. So,
I'm not doing it. Jerel, forget it.
We won't even do that to our own sons and daughters, let alone off the street.
Oh, man. Before in the previous segment, we touched on KPIs, key performance indicators. Can you explain what it's a fancy term, but it's a very no-nonsense, practical term to know where your business is and going? Can you unpack that, the KPI subject?
Absolutely. In fact, we actually have KPIs and KPEs, key performance execution documents as well. Because a KPI, there's a lot of ambiguity about it. Basically, a KPI is just identifying the outcome, the promised land. This is what you do, and this is exactly where we need to end up. And there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes they're referred to as SOPs, and there's all kinds of acronyms for it. But ultimately, it's telling you, hey, this is the outcome. This is what should be happening when you're done doing your job. That works in scaling a company, and there's no problem with that. But what we found over the years, and what I personally found, is that it doesn't go deep enough. A real KPI, or in our case, what we call KPEs, really is the step-by-step dissertation of how we arrive at that outcome. What foot needs to be put in front of the other? In fact, I'll tell you where I adopted it from over a decade ago was the airline industry. There's a pre-flight checklist, and there's a manual right behind their heads in that cockpit that tells you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 exactly how to fly that plane, what to do there. Nothing is assumed. So what we do, we've mastered this KPI, KPE process because we assume nothing. And we record everything. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We do it in video format. We do it in written format because that's what businesses need to have to scale. You need to be able to take the power out of remember I said a couple segments back, that the power is in a few good men or a few good women. You need to take that power back as an owner, put it in a document where if that person has ambition and they can read and follow instructions, they can do the job. Number one key to scalability, KPIs, KPIs.
We both are familiar with the work of Chet Holmes. Have you actually met Chet Holmes?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Chet Holmes, a great relationship with Chet Holmes. Kind of ironic how we met, I can tell you.
Yeah, please share it.
He was actually speaking at UCLA.
Okay.
I'm going back 2007, 2008, about his book, The Ultimate Sales Machine. So he was given a 45-minute clip on it. I actually happened to be at the university as well because I was speaking on leadership. And so at this entire convention, I had learned that he was going to be there. I had read his book. I had appreciated his book. So I wanted to go in really just to shake his hand and say, Chet, read your book. Fantastic. I use it when I teach leadership. Have a nice day. Turns out within 2 minutes, we just hit it off. Wow. And we hit it off so well, it is literally 2 hours from that moment we decided it was time to work together.
Wow.
And we worked together. And in fact, I know he passed away 8 years ago, but wonderful. His daughter and I are very good friends. In fact, she stayed at our home here a couple months back. We still work together. I still work with the Chet Holmes organization today.
Wow. Yeah, we had Amanda on the show a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, talking all about marketing. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, she's fantastic.
When we come back, we're going to talk about implementation, because one of Chet's one of his many quotes is implementation, not ideas, is the key to real success. That's his line. Now, of course, running a marketing firm, I can't knock ideas too much, because creativity is at the heart of a marketing firm. We have to have great creative in place, and we do. Yet at the same time, that's something that that quote I always connected with, because even for marketing, any great campaign, the real success is implementation. It has to be out there in marketing. You could come with the greatest idea, but if you're not going to put media dollars behind it, no one's going to know about it. So it's true, if it's creative, it's memorable, but you have to get it out there, and get it out there through different channels. So we're going to talk about, in the next segment, implementation as it relates to scaling a business. Jerel, before I go to the break, how can people find out more about your company?
You go right to our website. Just go straight to profitgoldgroup.com. Watch the videos. Take a look at it. Take a look at the pages. See how we do it. I really worked hard with my team to make sure that enough information was on there where you can see the methodology about how we position companies for scalability. And then just go ahead and click on the calendar. Let us give you a consultation. Let us talk to you. It's completely complimentary, but just go to our website, profitgoldgroup.com. We'll be more than happy to take care of you.
Amazing. Tonight's show is all about scaling a business. By the way, I'm really touched, and I appreciate all the feedback that I receive on a regular basis through emails, people stopping me, WhatsApp messages, phone calls, about the range of industries that we cover here. And we've been giving a lot of thought, like, what are some subjects that apply to whatever industry you're in, whatever profession you're in? And that is scaling. Everyone at some point deals with that. In fact, it's just a quick question before we get to implementation. Are there some, perhaps just some advice that you could share, Jerel? Not necessarily for a business, but for an individual, when they are hitting the ceiling and they need to then think about either growing into a greater position within their company, or even if they need to go to move on in their career. What? Perhaps you could just touch on that for a second. Scaling an individual.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's two things that an individual needs to really adapt, really absorb. One is, it's not a cut against you or your ability to do your job or be in your profession to seek outside help. So there's a level of maturity you must have if you really want to scale. It takes what's outside of you to make that happen. So that's point one. Please bring the maturity to the table, okay? And realize that's the first key. The second one is to realize that when you scale, you're going to have to step back to step forward. And what that means is that if you may be on a trajectory right now, maybe increasing sales month over month, or quarter over quarter, and that's wonderful. But when that system gets introduced for that particular quarter, for that particular month, you have to be okay with the fact that your sales may stall. You may not get that growth over month growth or quarter over quarter growth for a temporary moment in time. It's a step back to step forward. But then you'll find that when you step forward, you'll accelerate way past where you would have been. So it's really that realism is what the executives and the owner, you have to be willing to accept that, to really breathe that in and recognize it's a process. If you want that systematic, scalable growth, you didn't get here overnight. You're not going to get out of here overnight. It's a systematic change, but well worth it if you have the right leadership outside of your organization.
Jerel, before the break, we invoked a quote from Chet Holmes, and that is, implementation, not ideas, is the key to real success. Now, Chet was a creative guy. He wasn't knocking ideas, but he was talking about brass tacks. At the end of the day, it's implementation that will see a company to be successful. So as it applies to your area of expertise at the Profit Goal Group, implementation, how does someone go about, they want to scale and they reach out, but walk us through, how does one implement a plan to scale a business?
I would love to. The way that we create that, I'm going to lean back on the terms of use, KPI, KPE. That's why they're so successful. They're the backbone of any scalability because it breaks it down to where it's step 1, step 2, step 3. And so the way that we get to that point is really we use an algorithm of questions. And this is what a company needs to do, where we'll ask them the general questions of a position, just to articulate just the known steps that they take in executing a position. And you can do this on your own for those who are listening. You just list out the known steps. Then you jump over and you say, okay, for each known step we've listed, what is the outcome, the minimum level of performance that I'm willing to accept for that particular task? And you define it. And you define it as clearly as you possibly can. What you've done now is you've created a vision to visualize it. You've created a place of where you are and where you want to be. Now you close the gap by saying, what are the step-by-step details that will take me from this task to that outcome? And that's the first thing we do inside of every organization, because what it does is it sets the implementation in motion. Because now I can come in and read the task. I know exactly what details are required to get me to that outcome. So it has to be a system. Implementation is a system, not simply a word.
Now, here's a question. I'm not sure if you receive this all the time or sometimes when people say, listen, there's so much going on all the time. Where do I start? Is that a fair question? Or
That's a very fair question. And my answer actually is always the same. Start with a complimentary consultation. Speak with somebody who's been there. Because it's, how we are. We're A-type personalities, a lot of business owners. Okay, let's just go do it. Let's just go do it. But, a lot of times you're going to find that a lot of the components necessary to do it have either not been addressed or discussed or even exist. So, before it's almost like saying, oh, let's go build a house. Well, it's a great idea. But before you build a house, let's sit down and conceptualize what that house is going to be able to do once it's completed. Let's make sure it meets your needs when it's completed. That's a conversation, not an action item. So the same thing goes to scalability. You need to have a conversation with a professional who is very adept at doing it. And then from there, the action items will come. So that's always what I recommend, because I know that there's going to be a lot of people listening right now who just want to run out and grab the whiteboard and start. But have that conversation first so you know where you're going.
Now, Jerel, what is the general time frame? Now, of course, every industry is unique and has specifics that are related to that particular industry and people that work there, et cetera. What is the general time frame that a company should brace itself and be prepared of that amount of time it takes to handle and go through that, if I may say, turbulent scaling process?
I love that question, and we do get that question a lot. And I always try to give people a benchmark. In other words, I'm going to benchmark it by saying you must give yourself 90 days to start seeing permanent change. And I say start seeing permanent change because, like you had said, it can vary. But to start seeing permanent change takes 90 days. Now, the reason I say that too is usually when we go into a company, within the first 30 days, you can feel the buzz. You feel the excitement. Everyone starts seeing what's possible. They start understanding the vision. They start to go, oh, wow, I can have a role in that. And so you're going to see some spikes in certain areas just because of you have that honeymoon. You have that excitement. You have everyone kind of, really, really jazzed up because they're on the same page.
Right.
But the permanent change, in other words, now we're looking at documents that people can refer to. We're starting to put the skeletal part of the framing together, as it were, to use a house illustration. That starts at about 90 days. You must give yourself that to start seeing what will become permanent changes in trajectory for your business.
Jerel, you make it sound so simple.
Well, that's because we take a lot of the headache, but you're just transferring a lot of the headache to us, but this is what we do. I've never met anyone who envies what I do when they find out the intricacies of it.
By the way, before I get to my final question, which is, paint the picture of how rosy it is afterwards, but it's important for people to know, and you addressed some of the pointers, that it's a little painful along the way. There may be some staff adjustments, may even lose some money along the way, right? There may be some deals that just because, and maybe you could elaborate on this more, that you'll discover that there's some clients that may bring in revenue but are not generating revenue.
That's a big one. In fact, one of the first parts of the process is identifying those ideal clients, because you're exactly right. There are we all have those clients where they can bring revenue, but there's such headache. There's no profitability. In fact, you're losing other opportunities because you're sucked in to that particular client. And so you're right. There is, and it is an investment. But it's an investment in yourself. That's what I want people to realize. You're not investing in my consulting firm or another consulting firm to do it. You're actually investing in you, because the person who gets all the benefit when this is done, long term, is you. And that's what you have to remember. So,
Jerel, talk about the bright side. What happens? What are some of the outcomes? A company engages with Profit Gold Group, and then, voila, 6 months, 12 months, that period later, what are some of the oh, wow, you brought me to that point. What does that point look like? Well, I'm going to use some of the quotes from some of our clients. Okay. The Mass Tort law firm, they sent me a Christmas card. I never forgot it. It was really nice to get a card from them. And they said, thank you for a successful year. You turned our company into a well-oiled machine. Nice. Because what they could do, and now I'm going to bring in other comments from others, is one of the biggest things is not just the increase in revenue. That's what happens when you do a job well. It's just a byproduct of doing the job well. And that's what I tell everybody. But what they really, really enjoyed was the ability to forecast, the ability to have transparency into the areas of their business that before were really causing drag on their momentum. And just being able to look at a dashboard of conversations and departments and being able to ask the right questions, facilitate the proper answers, to move at a speed of business that was before just mythical. And now they can actually get the time off, anticipate. Those are the compliments that mean the most to me. And I will tell you, those are the compliments we get the most of. Yes, you get the revenue, but you get your life back. And that's one of the biggest things about it. Jerel Benjamin, before I let you go, how can people find out more about your amazing firm? Just hop on the internet, go to our website, profitgoldgroup.com. Like I said, you'll find videos there. You'll find, excerpts. You'll find testimonials there. You'll find our calendar there. You'll find 100 ways to reach us. All of that is on there. All you need to do is just go to our website, take a look, click through. We appeal to every business segment, every size of business, all the way through mergers and acquisitions. Take a look. Go ahead and get our professionals on the line. Just book an appointment. It's complimentary. It's the best half hour you'll spend with a professional firm. Thank you for watching, and make sure to subscribe to this channel and be notified every single time a new video goes live. Don't miss out on any of the weekly interviews that I have with top business leaders, sometimes Fortune 500 executives. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications.